Hey, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are new. This is Gwen. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. It does help me out and helps YouTube to notice me just a little bit more so that my videos can be pushed out for others to see. Let's get on with these projects. So for DIY number 1, I will be using this decorative wood blank. It's from DollarTree and they have it out for every season, every holiday. I'm also using this galvanized metal bird as well as some wall stickers. These are just a few that I'm showing you, but I will not be using all of them for this project. I'm also going to be using some alphabet stickers. These came from a dollar store, as well as a decal that I made on my Cricut vinyl machine. Then these Crafter Square wood eggs I'll be using to embellish this project, and also some moss, Spanish moss. So first thing I wanted to do was to paint this galvanized metal bird. And taking some of this agave colored chalk paint by Waverly, I'll be using a sponge dauber and just sponging this onto this bird. Since this is a metal piece, I find that using a sponge dauber is better than using just a regular paintbrush, just because when you do paint back and forth, you will tend to rub off the paint. But with a sponge dauber, you sort of just sponge it on like this in a pouncing motion, and you tend to get less of the paint lifting. And I found that this needed 2 coats just to give that full coverage. Although with metal, if you're familiar with painting metals, it does have a tendency for the paint to chip off unless you do give it a good seal. But I won't find that to be necessary for this DIY. And here I am going ahead with adding the second coat to this galvanized metal bird. So once I was done with painting the bird, I went ahead and chose which of the wall decals I wanted to use, and I went ahead with this style right here with the vase. I felt like the colors complemented well with this background, which is this really nice robin's egg blue sort of color. And that was the original finish that this sign came in. I didn't have to paint it or anything like that. I liked the color just the way it was. And these stickers definitely complemented that whole background color, which was perfect. So here I'm just placing these stickers the way I wanted them to be arranged and using the pieces that I wanted to use. I knew I wanted a focal point, which is why I chose that one vase with those 3 flowers and then added a few more around it. So you can definitely choose a sticker design of your choice, depending on the color scheme and style that you want to decorate your project with. Now, as I mentioned, I did cut out this happy word off of my Cricut vinyl machine. And here you'll see that I'm sort of fussing with how I wanted to place my wording. I wasn't sure if I wanted it high, low, angled, straight. So when deciding on how you want your words to be placed, you just sort of have to play around with the placement until you decide on what looks good to you. So ultimately, I decided on putting it on the upper half of this sign. And I wanted the second word spring to look more interesting, so I decided to place it in a arched fashion. So here I'm just sort of eyeballing how I wanted this to look, sort of in that upside down U shape just below the happy word. And this is very customizable, so you can definitely arrange the wording to your preference. And you can even choose a different color decal or stickers if you wanted to. Once my words were attached to this sign, it was time to embellish that galvanized metal bird a little bit more. As you saw, I had painted it the agave color, and it's more of a flat look. And I wanted to give this a little more dimension, more accent. So I decided to take some white chalk paint and just sort of outline the embossed or raised parts of this bird using the same sponge dauber. And I'm just dipping my paintbrush or my sponge brush into the paint ever so slightly and just lightly gliding it along the raised edges and just giving it this sort of outline look. I wanted to make a nest for this bird, so I went ahead and grabbed some of those wooden eggs by Crafter Square and painted it a beige color as well as a pink color. And the third color was this gypsy green by DIY Paint. Next, I wanted to add the metal bird to the top of the sign. I used some hot glue as well as some Gorilla Glue and applied pressure to the sign. I did have a little trouble with getting this to stick to the board just because the metal was wanting to flip and not lay flat. So it wasn't really adhering well to the sign. So you'll definitely want to add more pressure and allow it to sit for longer. But I just wanted to get on to the next step. So what I did with this bird to further embellish it was to add some clear wax. And here I'm just speeding up the drying process so that I can move on to the next step, which is to add white wax. I wanted to tone down the blue a little bit more, which is why I wanted to use white wax, because it does give that effect of more muted tones. The next thing I did was I took some of this white pom-pom trim. It was already in my stash. I believe it came from Walmart. But you can find these pom-pom trims from Dollar Tree as well. I wanted to give this a little bit more decorative look, so I went ahead and glued this to the outer edge of this wood sign. So I use hot glue to just sort of outline the whole side and bottom section of this sign. I just left out the top portion. So then it's back to the bird. I went ahead and applied the white wax to the bird and just using a brush and lightly brushing on some of this white wax and using a paper towel to wipe off the excess and just leaving a little bit of that white wax to show through and allowing it to sort of mute the color, that blue color. And when you rub the wax off, It allows the wax to settle into the crevices or into the embossed areas, just accentuating those areas a little bit more. Then I wanted to create a nest for this bird. So using some Spanish moss from the Dollar Tree, I just took the amount of moss I wanted to use to create the size of nest that I wanted for this bird. So I just sort of squished the moss around, fluffing it about, just creating a makeshift nest, and then hot gluing it into place until I was happy with how it looked. And then it was time to glue the eggs into the nest. Then I decided to trim off this nest just a little bit, just taking my scissors and snipping away at the excess. And the last bit of detail that I added to this DIY was adding a ribbon. I took some of this polka dot ribbon from Dollar Tree, just made a simple shoestring bow, and attached it to the corner of the nest. And then finally, I just went ahead and dovetailed the edges of the ribbon. And that is it for this first DIY. I think this sign came out super cute. It is perfect for spring, great for a porch decor or just for your inside of your house. And moving right along to project number 2, this one is going to be a very easy DIY. I took some of these gingham fabric bunnies from Dollar Tree, and they came in a purple color as well. I'm also reusing an old candle jar. I won't be using the lid, I'm just using the base of the candle holder, as well as some pink and white twine and some glue dots. You'll also need a LED type candle of your choice. Here I will be using the roses. So the first thing I'm doing is removing the ribbon that this gingham bunnies came with. So for the jar, I will be needing at least 6 of these bunnies, but you'll need maybe less or more depending on the size of your jar or candle holder. Next, I'm using some pearl beads, which also came from the Dollar Tree, and I'm using those as the tail of the bunnies. Here you'll see that I will be alternating the patterns of the bunnies. Some will be the solid pink color and others will be the pink gingham design. So this is essentially how I will be gluing this to the jar. Taking some of these adhesive dots, I decided to use these in place of hot glue. Now, if you don't have adhesive dots, you can certainly use hot glue. I just decided to go this route and just to see if it would work out. So as I mentioned, you will be attaching these bunnies in an alternating fashion all along the outside of this candle jar. So you want to make sure that you space them out enough to where you'll get a good even coverage all around your jar. So once you have all the bunnies attached to the glass jar, you'll want to take this twine and wrap it around multiple times just for an accent. And also it helps to secure those bunnies in place in case you didn't have them attached well enough. So there wasn't any particular rhyme or reason with the way that I wrapped the twine. I just wrapped it around haphazardly and then just made a simple bow. And then taking some of these LED lights, these came from Dollar Tree a while ago. I've had them in my stash for quite some time. And they're in this rose pink color. You can also take just regular LED candles or tea light candles and use them in place of this type of candle. But I have had these on hand, so I wanted to make use of them. I added some floral moss to the inside just to give these a little bit more height and add a little more color and interest. And that was it for this DIY. It was very simple to do. Makes a cute little accent piece, tabletop decor. And I just placed it on top of like a pedestal candle base and displayed it in my Easter vignette. I hope you guys like this one and leave me a comment down below. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thank you so much for coming back to watch my videos. I will be sharing some simple spring Easter DIYs. Hope you like it. For this first DIY, I will be taking some supplies from the Dollar Tree. I got those carrots, the gingham carrots from the 99. I bought these little bunny cutouts from Dollar Tree, as well as that chalkboard house in the background. I'm also using a mesh ribbon in that green color, also from the Dollar Tree. And the first thing I will be doing is taking that wood tint by Folk Art and using it to stain this house. Next, I wanted to paint these little bunny wood cutouts, but I only wanted to paint 2 of the 4 since I did want to alternate the colors of the rabbits when I glue them down. I'm taking this white opal paint color by Waverly and just painting 2 of the bunnies. And it has a shimmery effect to it. And it's really pretty close up, but it's hard to tell on camera. Then using some of this green mesh ribbon from Dollar Tree, I am just sizing out the width of this house and cutting out enough of it and then hot gluing that to the front part of this house. And this will just act as a barrier for the carrots to stand behind them. And you can kind of see it peeking through in between the rabbits as well, just for the added texture and dimension. And here I will be gluing all my bunny pieces down, just alternating the colors. Then taking some of these buffalo check carrots, which I got from the 99, I'm just adding a little more glue here and there in certain parts of the fabric that was sort of coming undone. And that's essentially what I'm doing in this clip. Next up, I will be taking some of this hay, or it's actually an Easter basket filler that I got last year, and I spray painted it in this sort of cream off-white color, and that's why it looks the way it does. But you can use Spanish moss, raffia, or just green moss if you want. But I thought this added a little more color, a little more texture, and I already had extra on hand, so I just went ahead and utilized that. And once I stuffed the house with the hay and added the carrots to it, I wanted to create some sort of label. I am using my clickable stamps as well as this ink pad by Tim Holtz and just stamping on a piece of scrap fabric, Carrot Farm. And this fabric is like a stained muslin from Hobby Lobby, which I already had on hand. And I just used Mod Podge to glue that to the back side of this chalkboard house as a sign. I wanted to make it look a little older, so I did distress it a little with some white chalk paint. Just sort of outlining it. And then brush the chalk paint all along the house as well. Then to ensure that the carrots don't move and that they stay in the position that I wanted them to so that the sign does not get covered, I just went ahead and added a few drops of hot glue here and there. And this is a finished look. I am super pleased. It came out adorable. And on to project number 2. I am using a picture frame from Dollar Tree. It's one of those shadow box frames, as well as a scrapbook paper from a paper pad, my clickable stamp, a mini grapevine wreath that came from a thrift store, as well as these mini wood eggs from Dollar Tree. So first thing I did was to trace out the size of the background of this picture frame. Just using the cardboard piece that came with the frame, I just outlined it and traced it out onto the scrapbook paper and cut that piece out. And I'll simply be using a glue stick to adhere that to the background cardboard piece. The next thing I decided to do was to paint some of these mini wood eggs. I just chose 3 colors that I thought would coordinate well, and I wanted to keep it pretty neutral. So I used Cashew Color by Waverly, as well as Castle by Folk Art. And for a pop of color, I used DIY paint in the color Prom Queen, and it's a really light blue color. And I just painted one egg in the blue color just for that pop and the accent color to come through. And I kept the other 4 eggs in more of the neutral tones. And you'll see it at the end result, how it turns out. Then I didn't want to keep the color of this frame in the natural gold color that it was, because I didn't think it would really tie in well with the rest of the aesthetic that I was going for in this DIY. So I decided to paint that gold frame in the same cashew color as I did with a few of the wood eggs. Taking a piece of scrap fabric from the Dollar Tree, I cut a corner piece and then tore off the rest of the way just to create a jagged edge. And this is what I will be using as a label for my shadow box. Then I decided that I wanted to add a little more interest to these little eggs. So I decided to speckle them using this same wood tint by Folk Art. So all I did was took my chip brush, added a little bit of that wood tint. You could also use paint color or the Waverly wax, but I just used this and I just sort of flicked it over those eggs and it created a cute little speckle. Then I wanted to go ahead and attach all my pieces together, so I took that grapevine wreath and glued it to the center of my shadow box. Then taking some combination of green moss as well as reindeer moss, I just went ahead and filled the center and added a little bit of green moss here and there coming out of the nest. And if you don't have one of these mini grapevine wreaths, you can certainly create a nest just using moss on its own, like Spanish moss, and sort of building it up to make it look like a nest. But I already had these grapevine wreaths, so I decided to make some use out of it. And I think it turned out well just in this DIY here. Then I'm taking my eggs and making sure that I don't have the same color side by side. I just went ahead and glued them down into place. And there you can see that little blue color pop through in the middle, just giving it that cute little accent and making this project pop. Then it was time to create a label for this little shadow box picture. Taking some of this scrap fabric again from the Dollar Tree and just tearing it so that it has a jagged edge, I decided to stamp the word nest on it using my clickable stamp as well as the Tim Holtz ink. And anytime you use like a stamp, you'll want to sort of test it out on a piece of scrap paper just to make sure that you have it coming out the way you wanted it to come out, or making sure that you add enough of the ink to it. So that way you don't end up messing up your actual DIY. Then in order to adhere it, I just use Mod Podge and stuck that onto the bottom of the nest, which is very suitable for this DIY in my opinion, and lends well to the whole spring theme of my video as well as the season that we are currently in. So I think that this came out super adorable. I am in love. It was simple to make, a very simple concept and very easy to do. So if you're looking to decorate in a very simple way with neutral colors and something that you can keep around for a while without having to, take it down when Easter is done or even spring is done, this is one of those DIYs that you can certainly decorate with throughout the year because it's just so simple and versatile and it's just very cute. Then I wanted to add one last piece of embellishment, and it's this little bow here that I'm creating with this crochet ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and just making a simple shoestring bow and some jute string to knot it up in the middle. I just tied a piece long enough just to create a little accent to this nest. And to finish off this look, I took a button which I glued to the center of that bow, and this does it for project number 2. I think it came out super fun and cute, and I hope you guys like it too. And now we're on to project number 3. Taking one of these plank wood decor piece from Dollar Tree, I will go ahead and stain the bead hanger using a baby wipe as well as the outer frame. I'll leave the center part the natural color just for contrast. I'm also using one of these chick wood cutouts that came in a pack. And here I'm just adding some hot glue to the center hole where the string should go through, but I won't be needing to use that since I will not be using this as a hanging piece. So taking some of this castle color again by Folk Art, I'm just painting up this baby chick, and this will be the background color. Now here you'll see that I'm painting both sides. Now this is not necessary. I sort of painted the wrong side and decided that I was wanting my chick to face a different direction. So I went ahead and flipped it over and just decided to paint the other side so that I had it facing the right way. Then taking some of the scrapbook paper, I just tore off the design that I wanted, and this is going to be the center of my chick, and this is just gonna decorate that little middle part of it. And here I'm just sort of playing around with how I want to arrange my pieces. I will be also using this redesign stamp, and I chose this floral pattern and just sort of playing with the placement of how I wanted my stamp to appear on this decor piece. I decided to stamp it to the right outer corner and then also to the bottom left corner just for balance. And just using the same Tim Holtz ink pad that I've been using for my previous DIYs, I'm just going to make sure that I saturate this stamp well enough so that it creates a dark impression. And again, it is my advice that you test out your stamp on a piece of scrap paper before you actually place it on your project, just in case you don't have enough ink on your stamp and then you end up getting like a choppy look or a faint color. So here you see that I went ahead and painted that top right corner, and I did the same thing to the bottom left corner, and I felt like it gave it symmetry and enough balance, and just took this decor piece up a notch since it was looking plain just with a chick. I wasn't really sure what else I wanted to add to it, but then I remembered I had these stamps, which I haven't used yet. So this was a perfect opportunity to go ahead and utilize those. Next, I thought about creating a nest, if you will. So taking some of this vintage music sheets, I decided to go ahead and accordion fold them, just flipping it back and forth. And then I'm folding it back and forth as well, just alternating front to back and then unwrapping it. Now, the reason I did this was just to create more of a crinkled effect. You don't have to do this, but I was sort of just experimenting and I really wasn't sure how I was going to get the look that I had in my head. So I was just sort of experimenting to see if this would create that look that I had envisioned. And in the end, it really did turn out the way that I had thought about it in my mind. So I was happy about that. Then I used this scissors that I had already. It's actually one of those scissors that you use to cut up like anything personal, like a shredder, instead of like the handheld shredder. So this came in very handy. I just cut them into strips, and it created like these really thin strips. And I got the idea to just not cut through all the way to the middle so that my pieces wouldn't be falling apart and be super messy. Then taking this distress ink, again from Tim Holtz, and this is the vintage photo color. It's more of like an antique brown. I just went ahead and distressed those shreds of paper, just adding a vintage flair, making them look a little older. Taking some Mod Podge, I went ahead and glued my scrapbook piece down to the center of that chick. And then use the same ink pad to distress the entire chick cutout. And I love the look of distress pieces. I like the look of vintage, making things that aren't necessarily old look like they are. That's definitely my aesthetic. And if that is something that you don't personally care for, then you can leave out the distressing part and just leave it, you know, in the perfect paint color without adding any type of distressing. So then I went ahead and glued my wood chick down to the center of where those two stamps meet. And then using those paper shreds, I went ahead and glued that to the bottom of my chick. Again, just sort of creating like a nest effect. I used some of these pearl stickers and just cut individual pieces down to create some accents. I used one as an eye for this little chick, and I also placed two on each of the stamped areas in between the flowers. Again, just giving it more added interest and dimension. It might not be as noticeable on camera, but it does look really cute in person. Next, I'm taking my clickable stamps and just stamping on the word chirp to the corner right there. And I think that finished off this look really well. And as a last and final touch, I decided to take a paper rose. It's sort of like a faint blue, bluish gray color, and just hot glue that to the center of my nest right below the baby chick. And this does it for project number 3. I think it came out super sweet. It's adorable. It looks great in a French farmhouse home or shabby chic home or even farmhouse. And I really enjoyed making that one. I hope you guys like it too. So now we're on to the 4th and final project of this video. I am using one of these snow globe decor that was from Christmas. It came from Dollar Tree, and I'm just removing the paper that is on the outside. You can use a heat gun as well as a putty knife or a spackling knife like I did to remove this, and then just sand off any of the excess. Now in this piece, I did use the backside of it since I didn't really want to go through the hassle of sanding down the other side completely. But I did want it to have a finished look by removing that piece of design paper that they had on it. Taking some of this plaster chalk paint, I just went ahead and painted the front as well as the sides of this snow globe. And then I decided to use some of these little mini wood cutouts that came in this assorted pack from Dollar Tree. This has more of like the spring designs in it, but I also used some pieces from the Easter pack. I also took one of these clear plastic ornaments that I got on clearance at Michael's. It's the kind that you can split in half, and I'm only taking half of it so that it could lay flat on this snow globe. And this will essentially be a snow globe, but more of a 3D type. And here you see a cute picture that I've inserted. That is the picture that I will be using in this project. And I just cut it down to size. Then taking some paint color of my choice. This is the Daffodil color yellow in the Apple Barrel brand, as well as this orange color, the pumpkin color by Waverly, to paint my carrots. And the leaf color of the carrots will be this mint chip by DIY. And I'll also be using that same mint chip color for the butterfly, which I will be using in this DIY. Then the little bunny cutout that I'm using, I end up staining in this wood tint by Folk Art. And with that same wood tint color, I will also be distressing the other wood pieces, just to give it more of a rustic and distressed look. Next, it was time to create the background of the snow globe. I decided to use a piece of scrapbook paper that came in a scrap pad and just outlining this plastic ornament in the part of the paper that I wanted to use. Here I was trying to decide on how I wanted to arrange all my pieces. I wanted to make sure that that picture was fitting within the plastic ornament, so I did have to trim it down a bit more. I used Mod Podge to adhere the picture to the scrapbook paper. And then taking this Distress ink by Tim Holtz, just went ahead and rubbed that ink pad all around the snow globe, just giving it a little rustic look. And I did the same with the picture as well as that piece of scrapbook paper, just to sort of tie in everything. Next, I used a glue stick to glue the scrapbook piece down to this snow globe, and just making sure I was within the range. I kept placing that plastic ornament down just to make sure that I wasn't outside of it. Then it was time to glue all my wood pieces down. I just wanted to arrange it in a way that was not going to cover this cute little boy in the picture. And I went ahead and glued the butterfly as well as that chick. And I did have some extra left over of this paper shred that I made for my last DIY, and just crumpled that, twisted it, and then just stuffed it in to the bottom of his picture and glued that into place. And once all the paper shreds were inside of this little area, I glued my Christmas ornament onto the snow globe. Taking some of this reindeer moss as well as some green moss, I just glued those down to the base of this snow globe, just adding a little bit more Easter spring look to it. So this looks sort of like grass. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the last few pieces of the wood decor piece that I painted, which were a few of the carrots as well as a bunny. Then I went ahead and took another piece of that scrap fabric from Dollar Tree and did the same thing as I did with the other DIYs. Just tore a nice strip, giving it that jagged look. And I wanted to create a tag for this snow globe. Taking my clickable stamp, I stamped on the word blessed using this Tim Holtz ink pad. So I went back and forth with trying to decide on where I wanted to place this tag. I didn't know if I wanted to glue it directly onto that moss down at the bottom, or if I wanted it sort of angled and hanging, just to make it look more like a tag. I decided to use some of the scrap raffia and tied it to the base, just double knotting that. So I thought about punching a hole in this tag just so I can hang a piece of string and make it dangle. But I decided against it since I didn't have much space to punch a hole and I didn't want the hole to run through one of the letters. Instead, I decided to cut a piece of jute twine and just glue it to the back of this tag and give it the illusion that it's been strung on a piece of string, when in actuality, it's just been glued to a piece of string. At the end, you really can't tell anyways because it's all layered on top of each other and they all sort of mesh into each other. So it doesn't make a big difference. But here it is. I just placed that on top of the raffia over the moss at an angle. And I think I really like the way this looks. Then I took one of these flower embellishments. It's from the sewing section at Walmart. And I just glued that to the center of the raffia. And that does it for this DIY. I am super happy with how it came out. It's adorable. All the DIYs in this video are very spring-like, very Eastery, neutral. You could keep them around throughout the year if you wanted to. They were super easy and quick to make. And most of the supplies are from Dollar Tree. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up and comment down below. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would invite you to join my creative family and hit that red button. Make sure you hit notifications and hit all so that you will be notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching.